why I use Linux, that's a complicated question, and there's a lot that goes into the answer. But I think for the most part is that with Linux and open source operating systems, you truly own your experience. And by that I mean that when you use proprietary operating systems and proprietary software in general, you don't really own your experience. You rent it. You are bound by numerous constraints that are there to make money for some corporate interests. And by saying that, I am not vilifying commerce or being against making money or whatever. That's like the world that we live in, and really that's a different conversation. But the catch with that, though, is that as a user, as a person who is utilizing a computer, utilizing a tool to do their work, there are many situations where that is a conflict of interest, where Microsoft's decisions that affect you are being made for their bottom line, are being made for their interests. And when you're using a tool, you want the tool to be there for your interests primarily. The tool should be there to do its job for you, not to be doing this job for a non-present third party. And so I guess that's really the core of my main argument for using Linux. And I mean, that's a little abstract, and I'll try to give you some examples that back that up. So right off the bat, some easy examples are you don't have to have some verification code or some kind of like phone home situation to like activate the software. You don't even have to have, like, if you want to download OpenSUSE, you don't even have to have an account with OpenSUSE to do it. You can go directly to their webpage, click their freaking, download ISO, installation ISO for Leap or Tumbleweed, and you don't even have to join their site to do it. You can just get it. You are in the driver's seat when you use Linux or other open source operating systems. There are no artificial boundaries between what the software is doing and what you need it to do or what you are asking it to do. You are very much a citizen rather than a customer. And that's a different philosophy, because when you're a citizen, you have rights and you also have responsibilities. So what that means is that you have the right to the software. You can use it in any way that you see fit. You can do nearly anything with it. You can change it, you can modify it, you can make copies of it and give it to other people. You are not constrained in any way with how it works. The only responsibility that you have is that if you make a modification to the source code, then you have to share that. And other than that, it's free game. You can do whatever you want. And that's very empowering for a computer user. It's a huge responsibility, to be sure, to be the custodian of your experience, basically. Essentially that's what you are paying Microsoft for, or you're paying Apple for, is that you're allowing them to make decisions on your behalf. And when you're a Linux user, those responsibilities are on you. But the upside to that situation is that there are numerous resources. There's an almost inexhaustible amount of information because there are no artificial barriers. Everything is open. You're really only limited by yourself. Nobody is standing in your way and telling you you can't, or that there's just some black box at the core of your computing experience where they're just like, nope, you're not allowed to see this because it's our secret sauce. The recipes are there all the way down to the kernel, so you're really only limited by yourself with how far you're willing to go. And that's a huge task, and to be honest, there's not many of us who can fully take that burden on, but luckily you don't have to, because that's where the community comes in. There are other people who all have a variety of different talents and specialties and know different things about how the operating system works, and they're all part of the community, so you can always get help. There's other people that are running into the same problems you're having. There are other people that are looking to fix the same problems that you're having. And sometimes it's just a matter of waiting for a new version to come out, which happens nearly constantly. Like if you switch to a rolling release, you get updates nearly every day. Getting back to the core point. The other advantage of Linux is that it is made purely for utility. So it's a tool that's made to do a job. It's not made to maximize shareholder profit, right? It's there to be as sharp a blade as it can be. And when you get down to it, that's what is really the core thing, is it's just so performant. And it's so scalable and customizable. Like, you can run Linux on everything from a little Raspberry Pi Zero, just embedded computer with, barely any memory and compute power, to, supercomputer scale. The Linux kernel powers Android smartphones and like tons of set-top things and Rokus and shit like that. It's hugely customizable to any task, and even within just the scope of a standard user, there's a lot of customizability. If you're running an old computer, you can always remove packages that you're not using, and you can run a lighter weight desktop environment that might look a little more like Windows 98 or something, but just sips system resources. It just really gives your hardware a lot more life. My main laptop is a probably like 2012 era laptop, and it still does everything that I need it to. It's in no way like sluggish or old. It runs beautifully with the current version of OpenSUSE. Increasingly, Linux is as a desktop, the experience, it gets better and better as years go on. Like even just in the span that I've been using it in the past 10 years, there was, you could get a like back in, 2010, like when I first started with Ubuntu, there was little paper cut issues, and you would have to go into the terminal to like tweak things, and there was just difficulty, either finding software or making sure it was compatible, and there was issues with hardware drivers for a lot of hardware, and you'd have to really check to make sure things were compatible with your as far as like printers and peripherals went. You'd have to really make sure that they were going to work. Nowadays that's very, very very much not the issue. Almost everything I can think of is plug and play. The only problem you might have is with something that's super, super bleeding edge, like something that's really brand new. Unless it's stated that there's a Linux driver, there may not be compatibility for it yet. But usually the kernel catches up with that. And that's the other beautiful thing, is that when it's supported, it's just supported. You don't have to go to a manufacturer's website and find some fucking driver that's buried. It's just, once it's in the kernel, it's just there. It's plug and play. It's beautiful. It's a seamless experience. So there's a couple of other pluses to using Linux, and these are pretty widely touted as reasons to use Linux, but I feel like they're lesser reasons, and they come with some heavy caveats. So, for one, like security, people talk about like Linux being so much more secure, and doesn't have viruses or doesn't have malware, and you don't need to run an antivirus, and that's generally true. However, it comes with a big asterisk on it, and that's that, yes, there is malware that targets Linux, and there are viruses that target Linux. They are much fewer, and usually they are targeting like infrastructural kinds of things. They're targeting servers and stuff, because that's where you see Linux more. But as far as desktop use, it's negligible. But nothing is purely secure, and I feel like that is overstated by a lot of by enthusiasts, or a lot of these like why I use Linux lists. There is, nothing is purely secure, and it doesn't mean that because you're running Linux you can engage in in poor internet hygiene. Like if you're opening rando weird links in your email and visiting sketchy websites and clicking on strange pop-ups and stuff, you're going to be a vector for malware. Like, so it's not a silver bullet for viruses or malware. It is much better. It is a much smaller target for these things, but it's not a replacement for having good internet hygiene and having a security mindset. And then the other thing is just privacy. So because Linux is made to be a tool primarily, rather than some commercial product, you get very little of any sort of corporate espionage, data mining kind of behavior. And even if somebody tried to insert that kind of stuff into the source code, it would be found out by the community and would disappear rather quickly. Ubuntu has taken flack for having, phone home kinds of processes running in Ubuntu, and having like Amazon search results pop up in Unity's search window and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's not really an issue. You don't have to worry about having your data pilfered by third parties when you're using Linux, at least not by the operating system. If you're using Google Chrome for Linux, that's another story. You should never do that. Don't use Chrome. If you care about privacy, do not use Chrome. Do not use Google products if you are concerned about privacy. Additionally, I feel like, and this doesn't apply to everybody, additionally, Linux is great for people who are interested in technology and computers, and just by using Linux you will learn more about how computers work. It is very tied very closely to the hardware and to the control of how software works, and just the structure of how software works. It's very intimately tied, and it's transparently tied too. You can see how all the pieces go together. And I feel like with proprietary operating systems, it's a black box. They don't really want you to know how it works. There's just that corporate level of paranoia about their users, and they want to keep you from finding it out. They don't want you to tinker with it. And with Linux, there are no closed doors. You can dig as deep as you want to go and find out how things work. And to somebody like me, who's like very much like do it yourself, and like wants to explore and see what's going on under the hood, it's just a godsend. It really puts the computing experience like in your hands. I wouldn't give it up for anything. Like, I think if I stop using Linux, I would probably just stop using computers. Like, it's that close. But as far as going back to proprietary operating systems, it's just never going to happen. I'm done. I'm out.